Hi, my name is Vince, and today I'm going to teach you how to paint hands. All right, here's the deal. Hands are no joke, and they're really difficult, and there's no way around it. Every time I come to a figurative painting and I get to the hands, I'm sweating it because there's just so much that can go wrong, and you should be frightened. So let's talk about a few things that we can do so that maybe, just maybe, it'll be a little less intimidating. First of all, just break your hand down into kind of a couple of shapes. Like, so if we just take a look at mine here, there's an overall kind of box and a square here that happens here. That's great to know. As well as these fingers kind of have, there's an overall arch here, fingers cut off here. There's a connection. These three usually sort of hold together. There's something different about the old index finger, and that one will often be doing something quite different than these, as these all curl in. This one may be different in a certain way. And then you have this whole portion here in and around the thumb. This is its own little shape right in here, kind of inside your square. And you kind of pay attention to some of these lengths here, and then there you go. There's a lot to keep track of. There's a lot you can do, but there's also a lot you can do to help yourself out. It's one thing to paint like this. You're looking directly at my hand, and it's very uniform, and you're looking at it as though it were flat. It's a very different thing to give it some movement. Move back in space. These fingers wrap around and come this way. When you do things like this, you're automatically helping yourself out in creating volume, because there's space in between here, and we all intuitively understand that. You utilize that to your ability. Make it go back in space. So do things where a finger curls back around, or something comes out toward the viewer slightly. That way, you're not just ending up with something that's flat, but something that's very dynamic. All you have to do is flip through a Renaissance art textbook and look at all the various, why did I say textbook? I mean, this is not that, I mean, okay, yeah, you're the internet, use the internet. A Google search engine, and look at the images tab. That might be very helpful. But really though, you can see how to create a lot of movement with the hand. And just like our faces are very expressive and we communicate with our faces, we also communicate with our hands. And so it's very important to take the hand and utilize it in a way that best serves your painting. So don't make it boring. Break up the fingers so that they do interesting things. I've got an image ready here that I think kind of does some of those things I've talked about, and we're going to draw it on this surface. And this is the hard part. Drawing, it's going to take some time. I'm probably going to get it wrong a time or two. I'm going to have to make some adjustments, but I'm going to use my best comparative method, just judging my distances, where does one thing end and another begin, until I get close. And then we'll start some painting. So let's see how the drawing goes. Just like all the other videos you've watched, I'm going to start paying attention to some of the main diagonals that I really like. And I'm going to This is going to be the middle of the thumb, I hope. I'm really thinking about this in terms of planes. You know, you think about the planes of the hand. We've got to really treat it three-dimensionally. Kind of imagine each of these as something that wraps around and comes around. If we don't do that, we're going to get in trouble quick. See how that goes. All right, now it's very likely that I'm going to get this wrong, but we're going to go with it anyway. I'm paying attention to the whole shape here. There's a big part of the hand that just kind of goes off in this direction. The palm, where we got a little bit of energy there. Way through the big cushion of the thumb. And an interest of making the image a little more interesting, I made some decisions. Wanted to show you a few fingers extended, curled in, and just this is the purpose of this is to see some foreshortening as well as straight on. I really want to create something that you'll have a lot of reference to the next time you dive into a hand. You know, I'm thinking a lot about these shapes that are happening and really paying attention. So I'm already kind of getting off here. Thumb is thicker than I'm making it. And we're gonna have some fudge room as we always do. We just want to make sure we don't end up too far off, too far gone. There's a connection here. We know that the edge of the hand here is going to connect up into the index finger, so I'm just kind of following that around the first knuckle. Just about there, and it's going back into space just slightly. The finger here. And again, this is just what I'm working from. You know, I can see that, okay, this finger's going to begin going back into space. We're going to use a little bit of a contour line drawing, which each of the digits and each of these individual bones then begin to kind of tell us, so we can utilize each one of these moments to tell, is it going back in space? Then we're going to see the oval, see these lines take us back there, and we're going to utilize the brush stroke just like we did, just like you did when you did the drapery tutorial. Same exact thing. Okay, I'm trying to measure here about halfway. This guy's going to come up about to here. Here's where it's going to get dicey. We're going to also work our way in from the other side. Got this last little digit and bone coming in here. Height doesn't get above here, so it's going to stop here-ish. Here's the next finger coming in, it breaks. front of, and overlapping. What is one of the easiest way we can keep things in space? Simply overlap something. It's a big deal. If you overlap it, then we all understand, oh, hey, that's in front of that. So crude, extremely effective. In conjunction of this knuckle, this one is still a little lower. So you know it's going to go too far. This is again, comparing, constantly looking, trying to figure out, all right, if I look at the big pad of the thumb here, assuming that I've drawn that in about the right spot, it is about at this point, which looks like it's about right, that we're going to get the biggest break in between our fingers. The middle finger does kind of go back behind just slightly there, and then we're going to get a little bit of a break here. I'm going to get some fleshy bits here. And paying attention to how each one of these little parts moves as a volume is so integral to creating a hand that's believable. I think I've come in a little too far here. I'm going to break this up. Now that I'm looking at it, I don't like it. It's a little thick. This is what I mean about it's going to be some subtle drawing issues that hopefully won't slow us down too much, but they do matter. And then I wouldn't worry too much. You know, we're going to describe the fingernails, but again, the fingernails, I want you to think about their sole purpose is to try to tell us where the fingers are going in space. That's all we want. That's all we want from them. Is to kind of give us a little bit of feedback. So if we use this little half circle, then we know we're looking on it like this. And because this is so hard, I want to encourage you to practice a lot with hands. There's just nothing more important than just doing some practicing. I've made mine just a little wider than it needs to be. But I think I've got a good base that I can begin working from. All right, the middle finger is the one I like the least. I'm really trying to figure out, I think maybe what I've done. I think I've made this a little higher than I needed to, maybe. Yeah, it's a bit of a puzzle. We're gonna continue to work on it and sort it out. All right. I think we've got a good guide to help us get going. Still think my middle finger might be just a little too big. Bring it down slightly, I think would be a little more successful. All right, let's give it a shot. Let's get some paint in and get at it. There's just no way around it. I could sit down here and continue to fiddle with the drawing, and it might be a good idea to do, but at the same time, I'm gonna solve some of those drawing problems as soon as I'm painting, where I can really begin judging where things are. Okay, we've got a decent sketch. A lot of it is very angular, but that's exactly what I'm paying attention to. You know, how does each finger bone turn in on the next, and how far up is this one compared to this one? And the top of this knuckle, is it as high as this? And where exactly does the middle finger touch or get close to the ring finger? And so on and so forth. And these are all the little comparisons and the edges I'm looking at as I'm creating. I'm asking myself, did I get it? Is it in place? Is it ready to be put down? I think it's mostly right. I'm a little troubled by the middle finger, but I think it'll be okay. I think it's just a matter of giving a little more clarity once I get some paint down, but we shall see. So I'm going to begin like I begin every painting is by mixing a black. I've got black here ready to go. It's a mixture of burnt sienna and ultramarine blue. Got a nice big brush, and the darkest thing on the painting right now is the background. So I'm just going to provide myself a little bit of an outline. That will also give me a moment to really check my drawing. As I do that, I can be paying attention to some of my angles and how far things come. So let's lay that in and then see where we end up. Gonna probably need to mix a lot more black. It's all right. One of the reasons why, I don't give an equation or hey, each finger is this exact length. That's great. Those things can be really helpful, but they are just that. They're good for one vantage point alone. And then after that, what do you do? When you encounter moments of, you've got a funny foreshortened angle, you want to be able to draw things as you see them, not just get caught up in knowing how to do something one way. Just notice one thing I really need to do. So, thumb is a little longer. And I knew I would expose a few things that needed changing. So I'm going to just do that. I'll remember kind of how far I want to come out here. I really need to compare a lot. And so sometimes just a line drawing doesn't quite do what I need it to do. And in the main clarification of the drawing, I can't see until I begin getting some paint down and paying attention to some of these areas. You know, where are we at? What did we do? How's this going to end up? And again, I might make a couple more nudges here and there as we go about this. Still thinking very much about each angle. Looking at the negative space between these two and saying, okay, I think that feels the right thickness, and in comparison to the rest of each fingers, have I matched it appropriately? Does the painting work? Because at the end of the day, it's about the viewer seeing the painting. They're not going to see what you worked from. And so you got to tell the story so that it makes sense. When it comes to hands, I like to overtell. And by that, I like to make sure I get an angle that I can see what's happening in all of the fingers. Sometimes if you do a bit of a side pose, something where you would see something like this, okay, we get that. We know what's happening if we just look. But in a painting, that's just going to look strange. That's just the way it is. The burden of proof is always on you as the painter, and you've got to tell the viewer what's happening, and they have to believe it, because they're going to say, oh, that didn't really work. They tried, that nice painter, but they didn't get it. And so I like to overtell the story when it comes to hands, include all digits visible if possible, and make them nice and gestural. As I said earlier, you get the opportunity to tell a story with the hand because we communicate so much with our hands. Okay, so I got good outline here, something I can kind of work with. That's great. I nudged a few things over while I was doing that, and I feel good about those decisions. And we can move into the hand now and say, all right, let's find those darkest areas in the hand, which are going to be the creases. I wanted to cast a few shadows inside the hand too, just for some dynamic light situations, which are always exciting when someone views a painting and we feel what it's like to be in the shadow here of these fingers. Those are all little things I want to capture. So we're going to start by just trying to get into some of those darkest areas. This is quick, intuitive. I'm just mixing some dark, warm darks, because in these creases, it's often very fleshy. It's very warm and fleshy, and we want to feel those. We want to feel those coming together, and so this is a great way to do that, utilizing a really dark, warm value. Gotta be somewhat careful that I don't do too much and lose my drawing, which will probably happen anyway, but I'll still try to take great care. There's some cooler shadows. Well, let me start with the warm since I do have them. It's just a little lighter. Kind of in here, inside the hand. You can use your cadmiums a lot in hands. You want to take great care still. I mean, we're talking about skin tones, and while there are some pretty saturated colors in the hand, we don't want to get too far away from life. If you've seen the eye tutorial, if it's even out yet, you can see what I mean about some of the subtle shifts. There's some really beautiful little shifts that happen in hands too. It's, you know, that we'd never think. Little warms and cools, and just a lot of fun. I'll try to lay these in as best I can. And we're gonna, I'll keep my kind of darker brush there. There's some darker shadows on this side. I'm getting a little bit of a second light source here, just barely. We'll try not to get too caught up in that, but I'm gonna try to paint this where I see it. Secondary light sources coming right up on this side. You can see it. Tell a little bit about it. As best you can, when you're working, try to use only one light source. Don't let yourself you get confused really easily. And it's hard to tell the viewer where things are in space if you get really crazy with the number of light sources. So my recommendation, keep it simple. So right now I'm hanging out in the shadows and making sure that I get those nice and blocked in. Okay, before we move on to some lighter areas, I like to use a couple of different brushes. These flats are really helpful in just filling in large areas. That's what I generally use them for. It's just, I need to get things blocked in so I can begin describing them. They just do a really good job of that. It's really interesting backlighting right over here. I want to make sure that I get, and maybe even exaggerate a bit, we'll see. I'm gonna get down in here and some of these, they're kind of greenish, some areas, some have the brown in them, but as it just dies away. But as it comes into the light, we're going to see some more of the pinks form on the palm. And that's one of those great shifts. It's cooler around the wrist, and then you move into the palm where you see these warm pink fleshy colors, and it's always really exciting. I'm going to work my way toward the light. If you can get a decent drawing of hands, then it's exciting because you've got a good basis with which to begin describing your main subject matter. And keep paying attention to those subtle shifts. So here's a big difference right here too. In the palm, this is a really warm area, and then as we get to the soft part around the thumb, it gets cooler. It's kind of a little more purple-y, sometimes green, with all the blood vessels in here. And so I'm going to make sure that I get this light, but also have it be a different temperature. This one's leaning toward red and pink and orange. This one's just going to lean a little more green and purple. And these are really, you don't have to go too far to make that happen. You don't need to add a lot of these things to make that happen. But, and I even see the pink working at the very edge here. Before then, it also kind of piles up here and all this fun folded flesh. I can come back in here, get some of these cooler colors. I try to block it in. It's like, again, I do this every time. It's the rush to get it filled. If I've got information, then I've got something I can begin working with. But if I don't have any information there, I'm going to be moving from place to place and not achieving anything definite. I might get some things right on accident, but I also might do nothing right. Okay. Booking along. It's a little warmer in here again. We can feel it. Calluses are a little more pink. The shadows. And on top of this little crest, feel that? How do I see that happening? And tell that story a little bit. Let's get back to those lighter skin tones. And I wish I could tell you there was, hey, this is the color you should use here, or that, this or that. I just can't quite do that because light situations are different and you never know. Sometimes I'll look back at areas that I just left and I'm like, wait a second, I didn't quite finish describing that in a way that I'm good with. And so I need to rush back. Basically, until I get it filled in, I have some level of just insecurity. I just won't know how good my decision making is until I can get everything to the same level. All right, we can move up into the index finger now. I really like the feel of oil paint. I usually start off with a little bit of medium, especially if I want to fill in a bigger area. But if not, I've gotten pretty used to just working directly from the oil once the brush has been conditioned just a little bit with medium. Each one of the fingers is an opportunity to take us somewhere. Each finger bone moving just slightly against the light will get either darker or lighter. And it's really important to pay attention to those subtle shifts in the fingers, because when you do, then we get a very keen sense of where things are and how that works and where the fingers go. And we all know what that's like. We watch our own hands do all sorts of things, whether we realize it or not. And we're used to seeing that. Generally, as you get to the tips of fingers, you'll find they're more red, warmer, just part of how it is and how it works for us Caucasians. And I noticed I kind of goofed my drawing here. I might have to wipe this out a little bit. Try to knock that black back. Use your paper towels as needed. You have a nice soft edge there, that's for sure. Just get some of this bluer light that's coming in on this side. Then we have some of our areas here in between each of the finger bones. And then even a cast shadow from the middle finger coming back partially on our index. While we're at those shadows, we can add the one that's on the middle finger. So we're talking about that. And I'm just making my way. I need to get it covered, and it takes a long time. No way around it. In my haste of moving from one place to another, I will forget the ledges or things I wanted to do. Secondary light source, causing me a little bit of grief. So one of the best things about my college years was working in a studio where they made us paint the figure from life. They would cruelly have the skylights open to really blue light that would come in on top. And then we'd have these really warm incandescent bulbs shining from the other side, and it's very difficult. Light scenarios, very difficult, but great practice. Now for this plane in the light, and we really want that to be felt. I have to redraw this since I redrew the middle finger. This is a very methodical approach where you pay attention to the areas you're working, and you work on the next nearest portion, and you compare, and you say, oh, yep, there's that's definitely warmer, cooler, a little darker, a little lighter. That's why it's good to have the black around, is because I can at least look back to that and say, okay, that's about a 30% value against a 100% value. And each one of these finger bones is a volume. And it's sitting in the light a certain way. And you want to pay attention to that. All right, we are nearly there. Our main block in. And sometimes you get it wrong. Put something in and you're like, whoa, that's not how that looks. That's okay. We'll come back to it. All right, this is a really good time now to begin to reevaluate. Drop down just a little more. Okay, we've got everything blocked in. This was the quickest way I could just assess some of the skin tones I was seeing, some of the shadows and colors. And in this way, the major volumes are in place. You know, I lean back, unfocus my eyes, look at it, and it's working. There's not any immediate bad drawing stuff that just really bugs me. I know there are some things that are not quite right, but I'm a human being, not a robot, and I've done what I can, and I think I'm ready to kind of take it to the next level. So I may only have a little bit of time in which to describe something more fully. I wish I could take a poll right now and ask you all what I should do. But I'm just gonna, I think, decide to hang out right in here, describe part of the palm into a couple of fingers here, and then I'll work my way that way at a later date. But let's kind of just focus in here and see what we can achieve. If it quickly comes together, then maybe we'll move on, but we'll see. We'll give it another hour or so. All right, so here's where I look a little closer and ask myself, all right, what did we get right? What did we get wrong? And how can I get the desired look and feel? So I'm going to come in a little bit where I just didn't quite get all my background color in when I was quickly sketching it out. There we go. Very good. Gonna get some smaller brushes now to describe a few areas a little more clearly. There's a break between pinky and the ring finger, and it just extends a little more, and I want to describe those. Use my buffer to kind of calm it down. I like lost edges. Lost edges, if you want to learn all about those, watch my glass video. And using your edges, or even where they kind of blend in, it's just the way our eye sees. We see that way all the time. Things aren't perfect and perfectly delineated, and that's okay. We should lean into those moments and let our painting also have that same energy, where it's not exactly clear where something begins, the other ends. But if we've done our best to really describe value and good drawing, then we don't have to describe every little break. We just have to describe the important parts. And that's really exciting, trust me. We don't want to do every little thing. And when it works, and it feels like it's just sitting there, it's so satisfying. So even though hands are hard, you should really learn them. You won't be sorry once you're just laying them in and with confidence, and you go into a portrait or any other figurative painting with confidence. It's so worth it. It's worth the effort. So I really zoom into these areas and pay close attention to what I'm missing, to the point where I'll just kind of begin with this very finger bone of the pinky and the nail, and let's just say we're going to work at this until it's there. We at least have everything blocked in so nothing is too far different, and we're not going to sabotage ourselves that way by miscomparing. Again, even in the shadow, when I unfocus my eyes, I don't make out very much of this pinky nail. I'm going to get to it. I know it's important to at least tell a little bit about it, but I'm not going to worry about getting it just right. It's one of those details that's too much. Leave it to the cameras. Just tell the main story of these big shapes, these big blocks of shapes. When you have one light source, we will understand that all of a sudden a pinky is turned in, and we know that that's no longer light falling on it. And you utilize those moments to begin really feeling this angle into this angle into the light, and we know it would continue on around. Same for this finger too. If you've already done the work of making an exciting hand that is very gestural and alive, then you've done a really good job. And it's going to keep you going even when there's some frustrations. Sometimes I'll look at the very edge where the black background meets the skin, meets the pinky, and say, you know, what's happening? Just because I haven't quite told what's happening in that edge, I think I just see, feels a little kind of green, blue. So I'm going to take that and just kind of follow that edge. But then the edge looks warmer up here. I use a little bit of the burnt sienna. So we've got some nice digits going on there. I like them. A few things I'd like to be just a little clearer. Here, and interesting enough, there's still some light coming down right on this side of the ring finger, and it just needs to be described. Much like the white of an eye, or nails aren't white. You can kind of describe them a little bit if you want, but don't go overboard. Just the less you do, the better. But you can just do enough. That's my recommendation. Just do enough. And if you're always wondering, well, what's enough? Enough is always, what can you see when you unfocus your eyes? What detail can you actually make out? And then lean into that. I'm seeing a little drawing thing here. Now that I've gotten into spending a little more time looking at this, I just need to bring up this one just a little higher here. There's a really warm spot because the light is beginning to travel through. We'll see if we can describe that. Successfully. A little bit of a shadow from the middle finger up here. And this is long work. There's no way around it. You know, we've from the block end to this, we're making headway, but not quite there yet. And I just spend a lot of time looking and comparing. You know, what am I missing? What could I do better? And sometimes if it's looking a little blocky and I can't quite tell what's happening, I might get out my buffer brush and just work in a few of these areas and see if I bring any more clarity to it. I'm going to do just a little more down here. And get out bigger, lighter brush. And really get this in the light a little more dramatically. Into paying attention to that edge. This looks a little green there too. Blue, green. As it goes down, appears more warm to me. I don't know. We'll just soften it some. Better watch out. I'm going to get carried away into other things. Sometimes I just make choices too, because I really want it to feel warm inside here. I might just take some of these and work this edge in here. That's more of a, not necessarily something I see, but I want there to feel some reflected warmth, as we know would be there in the hand. Let me do it on time. And there's little drawing decisions there. Just noting it's a little more rounded than I had depicted it. I use my pinky a lot of time to stabilize. So I'm not using a maul stick, or just fine. Should use one. It's helpful. But then those areas where it's just a little harder to get it, I can create some stabilization that way. To make sure this knuckle right here is in the right place, and that the subtle shadows over here are working well with it. You know, around the knuckles, around the tips of the fingers, and each of the finger knuckles too. That's where you're going to find things sometimes get just a little darker, a little redder. And I can see that happening just a tad on the top here, and I want to describe some of that. Hopefully without painting over what I've already done. Another little drawing thing I'm noticing in this flesh comes up a little bit here. And then curves in. Not sure why it works that way, but that's how the hand is. try to soften out a few these rough edges. There's some parts where the ground layer is still showing through, and just to show you a little bit about the phenomena of simultaneous contrast, this here looks warmer, and then if you look at that same color here that I haven't quite finished around the nail, it appears to be blue. That's only because of all the pinks and the reds around it. You know, this is still the same exact color, but that's what happens when it's surrounded by other things. Here's where the time just slips away. There's no quick way to do this, at least not for me. There's other master artists out there. I'm sure they can block it in really quick, but it takes me a while. Again, trying to stay focused mostly on this area. Get to be a little more orangey than I have it depicted. Try to provide a little more clarity in here. So because I'm not painting every single little crease and everything I see, I'm having to make some decisions about what ought to be shown, what is the necessary information, and what is just enough information to tell us what we already know about a hand. We already know that there's lots of creases in the center, and frankly throughout. And do I want to paint every single one of those? I could, and we could take this into 20 hours. But instead, I'm going to focus on the most important bits of information so that we really feel like we still have those creases, even if they're not quite delineated very clearly. So it still feels like what we understand to be a hand, but also has the limitations of painting present. We're trying to work within a painter's ability to recreate what they see, not a photograph. And so that, for me, is always going to be choosing some information to include, some information to not include. But what I will always make sure to include is the main big planes of the fingers and the thumb and the palm. And in that way, everything still works really well together. And I think that may be the artistry behind painting is choosing the right amount of information. The things that are going to help your painting, are going to make it really successful, versus just be extraneous information that ultimately starts to feel a little uncomfortable after a while. I'm fairly satisfied with this, so I'm going to move into just finishing this to some degree so that we have, since it is touching here, that just feels like it will flow better into that area, which I may have to take a little more care in as I move toward it. And I did change the drawing of it when I was painting, so really the nail that I have there now is old information. The quicker I can get that kind of blocked in and going back into paying a little more attention at how this works. Carefully redrawing some of these edges. And when we get to the tips that are a little warmer, and also sometimes a little more transparent because we're getting to just some pretty thin flesh, you'll be amazed at how much chroma you do have to put into those parts to make them work. And edges can be a great place to put chroma, and you don't have to put a lot of it into certain parts, but really keeping it to the edges can really help give that feeling of the warmth around it, and us looking through these very thin parts and seeing all the blood and seeing everything that really just showing, feeling warm, alive. I knew the middle finger was the problem child, and it certainly has been. Little bits of information here and there that I just need to add to get it back to feeling like it belongs with the rest. And we definitely want it to feel as though it's hovering right above the ring finger. And there'll be a little bit of a battle in some of those areas to describe that correctly. A lot of times if you're having a problem and you're not sure what it is or where it is, just continue to look to the drawing, and that's probably the first area you can say, oh, yep, there it is. There's that issue. And if it wasn't there, then it's definitely going to be value next. So check your drawing, check your value. It takes a lot of looking sometimes. And then sometimes you do something and you're like, whoa, that looks really weird. I do feel better about how the middle finger's sitting in space now. It's still not quite where I want it to be, but I do like it more. I think it was mostly just little subtle drawing issues. I'm going to soften it just a bit on this edge. There's a little bit of another shadow starting on it right here. This is very complex light scene, even with just adding one more light source. Avoid it if you can. Still don't like that metal. I'm always guessing at what it might be. This might be that this is still a little too big. It's better. Well, we spent another hour just kind of handling this main area here and achieving a little more clarity in each finger. I'm mostly satisfied with it. The reality is hands take a good long time, and the goal is to really make you feel the volume of each finger. And make sure you give yourself enough space to make hands bigger if you can, so that you can model each finger. You can really capture the subtleties. There's a lot of great color and edges and all sorts of things you can play with. The folds are a lot of fun. And I think that's the big part. Don't, as hard as the subject matter is, don't let it defeat you. With careful drawing or with other drawing aids, you can get a good base drawing down and then begin looking at the color and shadow and finding all those subtleties that are just really nice about hands. We talk so much with these, it's really great. Hope this was helpful, and thanks again for watching. Hello, thanks for watching. I hope this was helpful toward your goals of becoming the artist you're meant to be. Here's some other videos you might like, and click over here to subscribe. If you want to see the channel flourish and ensure continued content, share this with a friend or join my Patreon, link below. And remember, never stop painting.